So the first topic is Pythagorean Theorem. How do you know when to use Pythagorean Theorem? Well, if you have two sides and you're missing a third side, you already know that this is going to be Pythagorean Theorem, right? So once again, how do I know? If they give you two sides and you're missing a third side, you should know to use Pythagorean Theorem. And remember, Pythagorean Theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember that c is the hypotenuse. Okay. It doesn't matter with the other two legs, which one you make A and which one you make B. You just have to remember that C is your hypotenuse. So, for example, letter A, X is the hypotenuse here. So you see that this would just be 14 squared, and you're going to need your calculator for the study guide. So you could practice doing this. So it's 14 squared plus 48 squared is equal to x squared. And now you just solve. So you take out your calculator, you find out what 14 squared is, and that's 196. Okay. And then you're going to do 48 squared. So that is 2,304 is equal to x squared. Now you just go ahead and add the left. So it's 2,500 is equal to x squared. And then now to get the x by itself, you take the square root of both sides. So with your calculator, make sure you know how to do this. If you have an iPhone, you have to press 2,500 and then press the square root button. Okay. If you have an Android, you press square root first, and then you press 2,500. So everyone make sure that you get 50 as your answer. Okay, letter B, same thing. I'm still using Pythagorean theorem, but the only difference here is that they give you the hypotenuse. So you just make one of your legs the x squared this time. So you see the difference with A and B? With A, the hypotenuse is x, so you have your variable here. But for B, your hypotenuse is given, so you make one of your legs, and it doesn't matter which one. You make this one x squared or this one x squared, it's the same thing, right? So once again, use your calculator here. You get x squared plus 225 is equal to 625. And then all you do from here is now you just solve this equation. You're solving for x, so you're going to subtract 225 from both sides. And so you get x squared is equal to 400. And then so once again, you're going to do the same thing. Just go on your calculator, and if you have an iPhone, 400, and then you press the square root button. Or if you have a regular calculator or an Android, you press square root 400, and you should get that x is equal to 20. Any questions there? Okay, so let's move on. Letter C. Sometimes you're not going to get something that is easily has a square root. So for example, look at letter C. if I do 6 squared plus 7 squared is equal to x squared, I get 36 plus 49 is equal to x squared. Now 36 plus 49 is 85. And then now you're just going to square root both sides. Okay, and you think to yourself, can I simplify 85? Well, let's go ahead and see. Okay, so there is no square root of 85, like an even number, an integer. But let's see if we could do a factor tree here. I know it ends in 5, so I'm going to use my calculator and do 85 divided by 5, and I get 17. So it looks like you can't really break down the square root of 85. Okay, that's fine. And that will be just your answer because you can't simplify it. Right? Remember that the square root and the square cancel each other out, so you're just left with an x. And then we couldn't simplify the square root of 85. Okay, so now let's go and do D. So once again, they give me the hypotenuse this time. So we're going to do x squared plus 6 squared is equal to 8 squared. And I get x squared plus 36 is equal to 64. And then I just solve for x like normal, subtract 36 from both sides. And then I get x squared is equal to, and then 64 minus 36 is 28. And then now we're going to go ahead and square root both sides. Okay, now let's go ahead and try to break down 28. 28 is 4 and 7, and 4 is 2 and 2, so I do have one pair here. And then so x is equal to 2 root 7. Okay, so that's the first topic on the quiz, is just Pythagorean theorem. Now the next topic is Sohcahtoa, which is your trig ratios. So remember that you use, what this means is sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent, right? So if I want to find cosine of x, okay, so remember, if this is our angle of focus, first thing that you should do is label your triangle. This is the hypotenuse because it's across the 90-degree angle. And then if x is your angle of focus, remember that the side across from it is the opposite, and the side next to it is the adjacent. And then since we're doing cosine, right, look back up at Sohcahtoa. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So now all I do is I just do 32 over 40, and then I just simplify it. Try to find the biggest number that can go into 32 and 40. That's 8. Not sure, Angel. Okay. 32 and 40. I could divide by 8. So this would be 4, and this would be 5. Okay, so for letter B, sine A is, so now for sine, we're doing opposite over hypotenuse. Okay. So once again, if you have a triangle, you have a hypotenuse, it's opposite, and this is adjacent. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So now we're going to do 32. Whoops. So once again, we have 32 over 40 again, and that simplifies to 4/5. Okay, now tangency. So here, tangent, if I look at Sohcahtoa, is opposite over adjacent. Okay. Now, if this is your angle of focus, angle C, this is your hypotenuse, and then the side across from it, that's your opposite, and then this is your adjacent. Okay. So tangent is opposite over adjacent, so this is just 9 over 40. That's it. You can't simplify 9 over 40. Okay, I'm gonna skip D. No, Hazel, 8 over 40 is 1/5. 9 over 40 is not 1/5. Okay, so I'm gonna skip D, E, and F. You could do those on your own. It's just similar, applying cosine, sine, tangent. I'll put an answer key later and you could check your answers here. But I want to move on to the next thing. So now let's go ahead and look at these problems. So now they give you one angle and they give you one side. So whenever they give you one angle and one side, you know that this is Sohcahtoa, right? Okay, so I'm going to write Sohcahtoa here just so that we have it. And let's remember how to do these problems. So 43 degrees is your angle of focus here. Let's go ahead and label this triangle. This is the hypotenuse. Across from it is the opposite. And next to it is the adjacent. Okay. However, what do they give you? They give you the hypotenuse, and they're looking for the adjacent. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your Sohcahtoa, and you're going to see which of the three ratios, sine, cosine, or tangent, has adjacent and has hypotenuse. Well, that's A, and that's H. So you're going to use cosine. So you have, remember to write the equation like this. You write cosine of 43, and then now you just do adjacent over the hypotenuse, x over 19. And then now you just solve for x. You just multiply both sides by 19. Okay, and then so now you have x is equal to 19 cosine 43. Okay, now, those of you that forgot how to do this on your calculator, Because it would suck if you know how to do this correctly, but then you input into your calculator wrong and you won't get an answer that's correct for the quiz. So if you have an iPhone, you have to type 19 times 43 cosine equals. However, if you have an Android or a regular calculator, you are going to do 19 times cosine 43 equals. So once again, those of you who have an iPhone, it's 19 times 43 cosine equals. Everyone else, it is just 19 times cosine 43, and you should get an answer if you round it to the nearest tenth of 13.9, right? You get 13.8957 and so on, so on. I need you to practice with the calculator to make sure you're getting the right answers right now. So now let's look at letter B. So once again, our angle of focus is 61. So let's go ahead and label this triangle. This is the hypotenuse. Across from the 61 is my opposite. And next to it is my adjacent. So once again, you are going to check. What did they give you? They give you the adjacent. And what are they looking for? They are looking for the opposite. So now you go to your Sohcahtoa and you see which one has opposite and which one has adjacent. So the one that you have is tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to use tangent. So it's the same thing as letter A. You are going to write tan 61. And now opposite is x, adjacent is 20. Now you just multiply both sides by 20. And then so x is equal to 20 tan 61. And so once again, those of you that have an iPhone, you are going to press 20 times 61 tan equals. Everyone else, you are going to just do 20 times tan 61. And you get x is 36.1. Okay. Angel, did you... Sohcahtoa is the way to remember your trig ratios. So sine, so Angel, pay attention here. Sine is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Cosine is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And then tangent is the opposite over adjacent. So it's just a quick way to remember which goes over which. Okay. Yeah, I think you might have missed this lesson when we did it. I'm not sure. Now, it is going to be timed, but I just don't know the timing yet. So I'm actually going to skip C because it's kind of similar to these. But now I want to show you that you could have the variable on the bottom. And I want to do a couple of problems with the variable on the bottom. So let's look at letter D. Now, once again, 49 degrees is your angle of focus. And so we're just going to go ahead and label the triangle, right? This is the hypotenuse. Across from the 49 is your opposite. And then next to the 49 is the adjacent. Does anyone have any questions on how to label your triangle, hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent? Okay, so let's look at what they give us and what they want in this question. So they give us the opposite and they want the adjacent. So once again, you're going to look at Sohcahtoa and see which one of these, sine, cosine, or tangent, has opposite and adjacent. Well, it's this one on the right, right? The O and the A, opposite and adjacent. So I'm going to use tangent. So tan 49 is equal to 13 over x. Now the x is on the bottom. So now how do we solve when x is on the bottom? Well, we're just going to go ahead and multiply by x on both sides. And what happens is on the right side, I have the x's cross out. So I have x tan 49 is equal to 13. And then how do I solve for x? Well, since I'm multiplying x and tan 49, the opposite of multiplying is I just divide by tan 49. And so the tan 49s cancel here. Now, so once again, if you have an iPhone, you are going to do 13 divided by 49 tan equals. However, if you have a regular calculator or an Android, you're going to type in exactly as it is. 13 divided by tan 49. Okay? And you get 11.3. So once again, try it out on your calculator. If you have an iPhone, you have to do 13 divided by 49 tan and then press equals. Everyone else, it is just 13 divided by tan 49, just how it's written. Then press equals. The iPhone, you have to do it backwards. Okay, I'm going to skip E and I'm going to go to F because we haven't done one with sine yet. So F is, my angle of focus is 29 degrees. And so once again, we're going to label our triangle. This is our hypotenuse. Okay. This is the opposite. And this is the adjacent. Okay, so we're going to do sine of 29. The opposite is 12. Oh, so once again, why sine? Because look, they give us the opposite and they want the hypotenuse. So if we go to our Sohcahtoa, we look for opposite and hypotenuse, the O and the H. The O and the H belong with the S, so we're using sine. So sine 29 is equal to 12 over x. And then, so we have the same issue here. We need to get the x on top, so we have to multiply both sides by x. That cancels. And I get x sine 29 is equal to 12. And then you do the same thing. You divide both sides by sine 29. And then so you get x is equal to, and then now just go ahead and do this one. So once again, iPhone, it's 12 divided by 29 sine equals, and then it's 12 divided by, well, sorry, iPhone is 12 divided by 29 sine. You press equals, and then regular, it's just going to be 12 divided by sine 29 equals, and then you get 24.8. I mean, for the most part, you just have to kind of know how to do it if you see your notes, right? Make sure you take good notes, right? Because you're obviously going to use it during the quiz. So if you know what's going on, then you'll be fine with this quiz, right? However, if you're just writing things down and not really understanding them, when it takes time to the quiz and you're looking at your notes, you'll be like, I don't know how to do this, and the notes won't help, right? So try to at least understand the process behind what's going on. Okay, now the next topic was 45, 45, 90 triangles. Remember, if I have a 45, 45, 90, right? So if this was 45, wait, hold on. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Okay, so if I have, it's actually going to be on Tuesday. Monday's a holiday. Monday's Memorial Day. So if this is 45 and this is 45, remember that the triangle went like this. It was S, S, S root 2. Okay? So look at letter A. If you have one of the sides is 9. So in a 45, 45, 90, the two sides are, the two legs are always the same. And then the hypotenuse, you just multiply by root 2. So this one's really easy, right? Y is just 9 because it has to be the same. And then X, you just multiply by root 2. That's it. That's the answer. Now look at letter B. Once again, the two legs should be the same, right? Now, how do I get X this time? Well, you just multiply your leg by root 2. So X is equal to 7 root 2, and I'm going to multiply that by root 2. But remember, root 2 times root 2 is just 2. So 7 times 2 is 14. Okay, so once again, you take your leg, which is 7 root 2, and then you're going to multiply it by root 2, and you get 7 times 2, which is 14. Yes, it is. Okay, so letter C, you have to know how to go backwards as well. This is going to be a test question, so everyone pay attention for letter C. So if you have a 45, 45, 90, right? And you have the 15 here, right? So what I'm going to do is I am going to take, so for letter A and for letter B, if I had the leg, I had to multiply by root 2. If you have the hypotenuse, you have to divide by root 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 15 and I'm going to divide it by root 2. But remember when we taught this lesson, we do not want a radical in the denominator. So how do I get rid of that? I multiply the top and bottom by radical 2. So this is going to become 15, whoops, that doesn't look like a 5. So the top, if I multiply 15 times radical 2, I get 15 radical 2. And then on the bottom, radical 2 times radical 2 is just 2. So that means your legs are the same. So x is 15 root 2 over 2. And y is 15 root 2 over 2. Remember, the two legs have to be the same. So you have the hypotenuse and you want to find the leg, you just divide by radical 2. Okay, let's look at D. Same thing. We could arrange it another time, but so we take 10 and we're going to divide it by radical 2. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by radical 2. Because I don't want a radical on the bottom. And so this is just 10 radical 2 over 2. And I could simplify that, right? That's equal to 5 radical 2, right? 10 divided by 2 is 5. So x is 5 radical 2. Y is 5 radical 2. Okay, 30, 60, 90. Find the missing sides of the given triangle. Now, for 30, 60, 90, here's the way the triangle's set up. So let's say this is 30, let's say this is 60, and let's say this is 90. Remember, the side across the 30 is your short leg, that's your S. Across the 60, you multiply by root 3. And then across the hypotenuse is 2S. So there are 3 different triangles you might see on the test, the quiz on next week. So letter A should be super easy because look, they give you the side across the 30. Whenever they give you the side across the 30, that should be a really easy problem because look at the way this triangle is set up. If they give you the side across the 30, you just multiply by root 3 to get your long leg. And then the hypotenuse is always just double that, right? Because remember that this is the hypotenuse. The side across the 30 is your short. This is your long. So if they give you the short side is 7, then you know your long side is just 7 root 3, right? Look at how this triangle works. If they give you the short side, you just multiply by root 3 to get your long side. And then to get the hypotenuse, which in this problem is x, you just double your short side. That's 14. Okay, letter B. So they give you the short side here. This is the long side. And this is the hypotenuse. Remember, short side's always across the 30, long side's always across the 60, and the hypotenuse always across the 90. So this time they give you the hypotenuse, which is 4. But look at what we did here. If the short side is 7, the hypotenuse is 14, so it's just double. So if they give you the hypotenuse is 4, then the short side should just be half of that. And that's 2. Okay? And then the long side, if you have the short side, you just multiply it by radical 3. Okay. Now letter C is the one that you have to do a little more work. So if they give you the long side, now you actually have to do some work. So you know how the usual thing is for the short side to get to the long, you multiply by √3. So now if you're going backwards, long to short, you have to divide by radical 3. So this would be 4, and you divide it by radical 3. And so you do the same thing we did with the 45, 45, 90. You don't want that radical to be on the bottom. So you're going to multiply the top and bottom by radical 3. And then so the top will become 4 radical 3, and the bottom will just become 3. So when you do that, you get your short side. N is 4 radical 3 over 3. And then remember, what's the relationship between the short side and the hypotenuse? You just double it. So M is 8√3 over 3, right? You double the 4 and you get 8. Okay. So I'm actually going to skip D, E, and F. They're the same as A, B, and C. So you should try to see if you can get the answers for these. And then check your answer with the answer key that I'm going to post later. But I want to move on to the next topic. Now, number 6, no one should get number 6 wrong. This is probably the easiest question on the test. Unit circle. Well, 6 and 7. These should be easy points. Find the coordinates on the unit circle which correspond to the following angles. 30 degrees. So you are just going to look at your unit circle, which you should have a copy of somewhere. I attached it to this document. You go to 30 degrees and you look here and you see that you have the coordinate of √3 over 2, 1/2. So you just write that. So once again, these are super easy points. 90 degrees. You go to your unit circle. You find 90 degrees and you write your point here, which is 0, 1. Okay, you go to 180. Find 180 here. 180 is right here. You look at your coordinate point. That's -1, 0. Okay, and so on and so on. Do I really need to do the rest? I don't think so. You should be able to do that on your own. Now, let's look at number 7. Remember how we talked about this? When you're on a unit circle, cosine of your angle is just x, sine of your angle is y. So once again, these should be super easy. If you get these wrong, I know that you didn't study or you didn't watch the video, because this is super easy. Look, sine of 150, sine is y. So you go to your unit circle, you find 150, you have 2 things here. However, since you're doing sine, sine is just the y value. The y value is 1/2. So the sine of 150 is 1/2. Cosine of 240. So you just go to your unit circle, you find 240. And cosine is just x. So you're going to use your x value here. which is negative 1/2. Okay. Two more. Sine of 180. Once again, you go to your unit circle, you find 180 degrees. You're looking for sine. Sine is the y value, and that is 0. And then last one we'll do on here, cosine of 45. Cosine is x. So you go to your unit circle, you find 45 degrees. You see a coordinate point here, but you're going to pick the x value. And then so it's √2/2. Okay. Now, number 8, number 9, and number 10 was just the homework that was due yesterday. So hopefully you remember how to do this. Number 8, if we're converting from angles from degrees to radians, remember we're going to multiply by pi over 180. So all I do is I do 150 times pi over 180. Remember, we could put a 1 there. And now all we do is we just simplify. I have 150 and I have 180, right? So you just think to yourself, they both end in a 0. So this could be, I could divide by 10. So that becomes 15 and that becomes 18. And now you just keep simplifying what goes into 15 and what goes into 18. 3 goes into 15 5 times, and 3 goes into 18 6 times. And so your final answer here should just be 5 pi, because on the top it's 5 times pi, and on the bottom it's 1 times 6, 5 pi over 6. That was just this week's lesson. Okay, once again, I'm going to show you 20 degrees. I multiply by pi over 180. They both end in a 0. So I could divide by 10. This becomes 2. This becomes 18. And then the 2 and the 18, I could simplify again. 2 goes into 2 1 time. 2 goes into 18 9 times. And so on the top, I'm just left with pi. And then on the bottom, because remember it's over 1, 1 times 9 is just 9. So it's pi over 9. Any questions on that? Okay. So if we're going from radians to degrees, you just multiply by 180 over pi. Okay. So remember how to do this. For letter A, I'm just going to do pi over 12, and I'm going to multiply it by 180 over pi. Right? So the pi's cancel. And so I just have 180 on the top and 12 on the bottom. So all you need to do is you just need to divide 180 divided by 12. And you'll get that this is 15 degrees. Okay. Now, letter B. I'm going to do one more with you. So 3 pi over 10. And I'm going to multiply it by 180 over pi. So once again, the pi's will cancel out. And so all you do on your calculator is you multiply the top, 3 times 180. And you're going to divide that by 10. And you should get that this is 54 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to skip C. And And then we're going to go ahead and do the number 10. So last thing, number 10 is to draw a rotation diagram for each angle below. Label what quadrant your angle lies in. So first thing, remember the quadrants. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. Remember, we go in a counterclockwise direction. So remember that, and you could use this unit circle to help you here, right? So you have 0 here, 90, 180, 270. So you have to remember 0, 90, 180, 270. So if I have to draw a 160-degree angle, remember that in trig, our first ray always starts here. And then 160 would be kind of close. So remember, we rotate counterclockwise. So 160 degrees would be between 90 and 180, but it would actually be really close to the 180. So you see that would be your angle. Okay. But if you have negative 160, remember we talked about this week, that if you went negative, you're going in the clockwise direction. Okay. So your first ray always starts there, but if you're going negative 160, now we're going this way. So we're going to go negative 90, and then negative 160 is going to be between negative 90 and negative 180. But it's much closer to negative 180, right? So it looks like that. And so this one is for letter A, you're in quadrant 2. Or for B, you're in quadrant 3. Okay. Okay, now let's go ahead and do letter C. So remember, 320 is going to be somewhere between, because remember, if we go one full circle, 0 and 360 end up on the same place. So if we're doing 320, remember, we always start here, and 320 is between 270 and 360, so it's somewhere here, right? And this would be quadrant 4. However, if you're going negative, remember, this is 0, negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, and then so if we complete the circle, it's negative 360. So where would negative 320 be? Well, if we're going backwards, 90, 180, 270, 320 would be somewhere between 270 and 360. So remember, in trig, you always need to start here, and then it would be right there. And this would be quadrant 1. Okay, does anyone have any questions on that?